been a living low carb man. Why?
Well, 2004, I was a 410-pound man on 3 prescription medications, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, breathing problems. I was a ticking time bomb at 32 years old and knew I needed to do something about my health. But I was frustrated, didn't know what to do until I read a diet book that I got as a Christmas gift. And it ended up being the Atkins diet. So I learned about low carb diets and carbohydrate restriction and ketosis. And it worked very well to get me off of all those prescription medications, which now 18 years later, still not taking any medications at the age of 50 now. It did help me lose a lot of weight that year. And so that was the main reason when I first started was weight. But I have found that it's been much more remarkable in its change that it did to me and my health.
Jimmy, you're not a skinny guy.
No.
I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. I've been fat myself. My journey is a little different. I started at 250, not where you were. But you've been at this for a long time and you're living low carb, and nobody knows what you looked like when you were over 400. Tell me about your trajectory and where do you want to wind up?
Yeah, for me, I am not as interested in weight as I am in health. Now, I know the two are very intricately intertwined. You can't talk about one without talking about the other, because if you have adipose tissue in your belly, obviously you have things going on, inflammatory and other things. And so it's not that I don't care about the weight loss, but I think we put so much emphasis on weight that you forget about all the other health markers that you could be helping to improve, like controlling insulin levels, blood sugar, blood pressure. I could go down the list of all the litany of blood work that can look great even in the midst of having weight on the body. So there's a lot of moving parts to the weight question. So for me, I've kind of peeled back some of the layers of it. Obviously, I have a lot of things that I could talk about, but to just kind of quickly recap, genetic predisposition. My mom had insulin resistance, 300 plus pounds when she had me. So that obviously gets passed on to the baby in utero. I also grew up in a very unhealthy food environment, eating a lot of processed carbohydrates, which just made the insulin resistance that much worse. I was also, I had a lot of childhood trauma where I was beaten as a teenager by my father and had emotional berating, which I've only started the healing process as of about 2.5, 3 years ago. So there's a lot of moving parts to the weight thing. For me, at this age, I just want to feel good in my body and feel and be as healthy as possible. And if you get health, that should produce fat loss.
I think you're right. It took me a long time to discover why I got fat. I was a fat kid. I had an unhealthy food environment. I wasn't beaten by my parents. Grew up in violent inner city schools because I was skipped up a grade. I was always small. I was a late bloomer. And I gained weight for 2 reasons. One was kind of the emotional protection of feeling big, of being bigger. And when I was able to sort of get over that, I became a more handsome, a thinner young man. I'm the thinnest one in my family, for goodness sakes. And I'm kind of proud of it, although comparison doesn't get you anywhere. But I got married and I got fat because I'm a teacher, and I thought that somehow in my head, making myself unattractive to other women would somehow be more faithful to my wife. Now, that was a misconception. That's a terrible script for me to have. But I came to it by saying, what problem does my fat solve for me? Like, there's something going on in my head, and it was an emotional response. It was a fear and an anxiety that being fat helped me soothe. When I was ready to give up those fears and confront my anxieties in other ways, it helped me lose weight.
Yeah.
So what I want to talk about is this mind-body connection. It gets underestimated. It gets sort of cast aside. And yet, when we go out in the world, especially when we go out on Instagram or we go out in social media where we're broadcast, there's a lot of moral judgment. Now, I don't mind. I'm in the health and wellness business now. I mean, I'm trained as an engineer, but I have my own health journey, and I'm trying to share that knowledge. But people could look at me and say, well, Dr. Seager, you know, you're a little pudgy there. And they'd be right. That's not a moral failing. People connect our appearance with some sort of strength of character way too often without recognizing what our struggles are.
That's right.
When it comes to thinking about this mind-body connection, we have this paradox. Appearance is not moral character, and yet our feelings are so much written in our bodies. So that's my soliloquy, and I'm hoping that you'll comment on your experience.
Oh, yeah. And for me, for many years, I got caught up in the cultural norms when it came to what your weight on your body meant. And I even found myself, even after I lost 180 pounds in 2004 and got down in weight, I found myself looking at bigger people, not purposefully, but it just kind of this default in your brain of, oh my gosh, oh, look how unhealthy, and not really seeing the humanity side of this. And it's what gives me such a heart for this now, not only because I am one of those people that people would look at and make those judgment calls, but you don't know the journey. You don't know how they got there. You don't know that they're in a much better place today than they would have been before had they not made changes. I lost my brother Kevin at the age of 41. He was almost 500 pounds. And was had heart disease, had a pacemaker in, type 2 diabetes, morbid obesity, all the things. My dad had a heart attack at 48, another one at 50, and then quintuple heart bypass at 54. I've had two grandparents that died of heart disease in their early 50s. I'm 50. I'm alive. I think that's pretty damn cool.
Right.
Because I probably would have fallen fate to the same thing that all of my family has. Now, that's not to say that I'm in a perfect position right now. I'm in a hell of a lot better position than all of them were.
Right.
And for me to now dip my body into cold water on purpose and do it well, like I don't want to ever have anyone say I'm not good enough. If you're putting in the effort, and I am, and you are, a lot of people watching this are, if you're putting in the effort, there is nobody that can rob you of the power that you have in here and in here to do whatever you want to do. And so that's kind of where I'm at in my mindset now is, no, I don't look the part, but I bet you I can run circles around you with my mental strength.
Well, that initiated this call. You have noticed a rare phenomenon in which the brain and the body, that connection can be measured, where Bruce Lipton talks about this, the biology of belief. He says, the cells in your body have no choice but to respond to the signals from your brain. That's how this is biochemistry. Your nervous system, your microbiome are all creating hormones and electrical signals to which your cells must respond. And you have noticed a preheating effect by you measuring your body temperature. You sent me some screenshots, and you know that when you're preparing to get into the forge, your body temperature heats up. That's your brain, according to our hypothesis, signaling your body that it's time to start the thermogenesis now. Will you tell me a little bit about how you discovered that?
Well, it was just kind of on a whim. I've been doing this challenge using your product, Morozko Forge. I was like, you know what? 2022 is going to be the year of the ice bath for Jimmy. So I got your ice bath last year. I think it came like November, December. And I did a couple of dips and I was like, that's really intense, 32 degrees. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to put up or shut up. I spent a lot of money on your product and I did it as an investment in my health. It does no good. It's a beautiful product to just look at, but it does no good if I don't put my big body into that water every single day just to see what happens. So I came up with an arbitrary, let me do 5 minutes in an ice bath of 32 degrees. Most days it's right around 32 to 33. Yeah. I always have ice in it. So it's the nice visual as well. People get a kick out of that. And I thought, okay, let's just see what happens. Let's observe. And I go on Instagram Live every day, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. And I show people, look, this is somebody you know. I'm getting in there. I'm not freaking out. I show where I'm breathing for that first minute and a half, 2 minutes. And then I start talking to them and educating them a little bit about cold therapy. And then I get out and I talk to them some more, answer questions. It's been great. But in the process of that, I'm like, I kind of feel a little flush sometimes when I get out of the cold. So I pulled out my thermometer one day and I just said, all right, let's see what my body temp is doing at the moment. So I do this number.
Under the tongue?
Under the tongue.
Yep.
And I would show them the reading. That's the current reading. So that's a lower reading, which is kind of typical. This is morning time as of the recording of this. And so typical reading where it can be lower. And then not just in anticipation of the ice bath, which, yes, I was seeing it consistently. I would do the ice bath at 5, around 4 o'clock. I'd pop a 99.5, a 99.7. I think I got a 100.6 one day. I was like, holy crap, I could actually feel that in my eyes.
People would call that a fever.
Right? Yeah, it's definitely a fever. And people are like, are you sick? Do you have COVID? No, I'm not sick, guys.
That's thermogenesis. Yeah.
But it was a phenomenon that was really fascinating to me. So when I started popping that, and I would see it day after day after day, I literally would post it every day. Look at what it is today, guys, literally 1 hour before. And I thought, okay, this is really fascinating. I mean, I hypothesized that it could be, yes, the mind-body connection that you were talking about. But then I started seeing elevations at other times of the day where I'd pop 100-degree temperature at, say, 11 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And I'm going, what is that? So then it has to be partly connected to the brown fat. How can it not be? Like I'm creating more brown fat with these consistent cold dips. And I'm sure there's other mechanisms going on, but this is the fun part of being an N=1 self-experimenter is you kind of see what's happening in you. Now, I don't know, would it be replicated in other people? You say this is rare. And I don't disagree with you. It probably is rare, but it's very interesting because it's happening to me.
Well, until you came along, I would have used the word unique rather than rare, because I've only read of one other case. This is Dr. Tim Noakes. He's no longer a practicing physician, but he does a lot of research. And I believe he's in South Africa.
South Africa. I spoke at his conference in 2015. I was one of his speakers at a big conference he had. Yes.
Fantastic. I've never met him, but I'd love to.
He is a jolly guy. He is
right. I've learned a lot.
Yes.
According to what I read, he monitored one of the world's premier cold water, open water distance swimmers. And he was the medical officer, if you will, monitoring what's going on with his metabolism. He noticed that this swimmer could raise his body temperature before he got into the water. And Dr. Noakes said he hadn't seen that, according to what I read, in anybody else. But this person was the world record holder and had trained, maybe perhaps unconsciously, his brain to communicate with his brown fat and begin the process of thermogenesis in preparation for cold exposure.
And I don't doubt that. I mean, the mind has a powerful, was it the whole psychosomatic kind of response? But I don't consciously do that. That's the funny part that, and maybe this swimmer, it was the same way. It wasn't a consciousness. Was he training at the exact same time every day that maybe then the body learned that behavior? So for me,
I think these are context cues. He knows he's at the beach. Yeah. I do think he's conditioned, but it doesn't have to be the same time every day for him to get the cues that would signal his body. And I have read that other people using breath work can activate their brown fat and begin the process of warming their body temperature. Wim Hof talks a little bit about this. Scott Carney talks a little about this. And they refer to other monks who have kept themselves warm by using the power of their mind to control their body temperature. But I've never encountered someone like you in person who's measuring this phenomena and discovering it for the first time for himself.
Yeah, and look, it's something that's new to me because I've always been a wimp in the cold weather. I would shiver, and this is another kind of cool thing, Tom. Is my shiver response disappeared 6 weeks ago, and it
Wow.
was simultaneous with this rise in the temperature. Me noticing the rise in the temperature. So when I first started getting in the Morozco and doing this for the first like 45 or so days of this test, I would shiver when I get out. I just have the little kind of shivers, and I haven't shivered in over 6 weeks now.
Wow.
And people are like, "Well, how do you know you're getting the benefits?" I'm in 32-degree temperature water. That's how I know. And I'm doing it. And the other day, last week, I was like, "All right, let me push the limits of my body's ability to handle that." I stayed in for 10 minutes,
Way to go.
fully thinking that I would shiver. I didn't want to shiver in it, out of it, and I don't warm up. When I get out of it, I let myself drip dry. I stay in the wet clothes till I'm dry.
I've seen
Then I
you.
take it off. I don't put on like a sweater. I see all these people after they're done with the cold, they put on this warm blanket. And I'm just like, you're not letting your body warm you up when you do that. And I get it. Some people have an overtly shiver response. Please
Absolutely.
get warm if you do
Let them
that.
do what works for them. Yeah.
But for me, colder the better. In fact, I stopped turning on the heat in my room that I go into. I keep it cold in there when I come out of the cold, so I get even more thermogenesis that develops. And maybe that's why I'm getting this response. Maybe I'm setting the elements up so that this would happen, and other people, maybe they don't see this because maybe they're not letting the environment warm them up, letting their internal brown fat and the shiver response and all the things be the way that they warm up. Because I hear people, oh, I jumped into a sauna after my cold dip, and I'm like, why? Why would you take away the beauty of what should be happening on the inside when you go into cold therapy?
Because they're working on something different than you are.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I have a friend with Parkinson's, and I met him outside the context of ice baths, but he got really curious because his wife is familiar with Wim Hof and has done some outdoor swimming. And I said, well, we know Parkinson's and dopamine are linked. There's either a deficit in the dopamine receptors in the brain, but we know that L-Dopa will help you manage the symptoms of Parkinson's, at least temporarily. But when you get in the ice bath, people have measured 2.5, 3 times boost in your dopamine levels. Are you willing to try it? He said, I don't know, but I'll find out. He did about 90 seconds. And again, 34 degrees. And the shiver scared the crap out of him because one of the symptoms of Parkinson's is a tremor. Yes. And psychologically, he couldn't differentiate between the tremor of Parkinson's and the shiver of thermogenesis. Yes. So he's very brave, but he's not sure if the ice bath is making his Parkinson's worse or better. Rewarming using dry heat in a sauna helped him get over the anxiety of the shiver. And then he experienced hours of relief from a muscle spasm in his foot that would lock him up. Now, this guy is a pilot, not for a living, but he owns a plane. He's a retired dentist and he likes to fly. There's some association of like flying dentists or something like that. And can you imagine, he can't sit in a chair for an hour and a half without his left side locking up and causing acute pain. So what is he working on? I mean, he's not obese. Right. He's working on his Parkinson's. And he came over to my house to do a forge. We didn't do a lot of rewarming. I don't have a sauna at home, but because he's experienced, he wasn't so much worried about the trembling anymore. He was getting ready for a flight. And he texted me on the way back to his house. He said, I am riding home in bliss because his left foot is able to operate now. The anxiety of the spasms is gone. What I'm trying to say is everybody's working on something different. Yes. And from what I've read, you're doing it right for weight loss. You're getting the maximum thermogenesis, the maximum fat burn. And this, there's going to be a medical term for it, but this idea that you're able to start the thermogenesis before you get in, I think is discovered in you perhaps by the unique way that you're doing your cold practice.
Yeah, fat loss is certainly a part of that, by the way. I don't want to discount that, but I love what it's done to my sleep. Like I track with the Oura, and
Yeah.
so I get pretty regularly over 4 hours combined of REM and deep, which is pretty significant in like just 6 to 7 hours of total sleep. So it's pretty efficient sleep. And the only thing I can credit it with, well, I also do CBD oil and magnesium, but I've done that for years. But in combo with the ice bath, boom, like it's amazing. And then just I've had such a better peace of mind about me. Not that I've ever been somebody that's uptight and upset and everything, but with
No,
all
that's
the
my
events in the
job.
world, what's that?
I get uptight and upset. Yeah.
But with all the events of the world the last couple of years,
Yeah.
and I went through a pretty bad breakup, divorce that was really bad. I've had some stress in my life. So being able to use cold therapy to kind of calm the mind, body, soul has been pretty phenomenal for me. And I would say above everything that I've experienced with the cold therapy, especially since using the Morozko Forge, has been the tranquility that I feel. I feel good in my own skin at all times. And I can't say I've always felt that way.
Let's talk about the shivering because it's related to those emotions.
Yes.
There's a great book, Peter Levine. He wrote An Unspoken Voice and Waking the Tiger. One of the things he talks about is how mammals like us respond to trauma with a tremor. I don't think he uses the word shiver. He uses tremble or tremor. It's also true that patients who come out of brain surgery, they're experiencing acute physical brain trauma. When they recover, sometimes they will tremble. And medical professionals used to try and stop the trembling. Levine talks about when he was run over by a car, he was conscious, the EMTs showed up and they wanted to immobilize his body, but he asked them, he had the awareness to ask them to allow him to tremble because he knows that the trembling is the release of the trauma from the nervous system.
Yes.
There's something about trembling that is healing, that allows the nervous system and the brain to reset from the trauma. Okay, now we're going to bring it to shivering. I find that I will shiver right away when I've had a fight with my girlfriend, when I'm letting fears and anxieties overcome my feelings, when I'm having automatic catastrophic negative thoughts, when I'm anxious, I will go, it doesn't matter what the temperature is, I will go right into shiver. And I wonder if that's related not to my metabolic state, but to my emotional state. Because I've also had experiences like you where 10, 12, 14 minutes, no shiver. And those are times that I'm more secure in myself, when I'm more confident in my place in this world.
Yes.
It's possible. When I heard you say, I don't shiver anymore, I was wondering, I wanted to say, Jimmy, how are you feeling? You know?
Oh, great. Although I will tell you, it's funny how you say about the trembling thing, because I will occasionally feel like a little something in my shoulder will just start shaking. You know, you get that little twitch in your eye. Yep. I'll get a twitch like right there, or a twitch on my pec or on my leg. And it's just an ever so slight little tremble. And I'm wondering, okay, is something being released from that? So I may not shiver, but I am getting little signs, and it's not constant. But every once in a while, I'll feel that. Since I've been doing these ice baths, I've never had that other than the eye twitching before. It's really fascinating to kind of observe these kinds of things.
Well, Levine might say you are getting a trauma release, but I don't know. And I think you're asking yourself the right question. Am I releasing something? What would that be? The shoulder is an interesting point. The eye is an interesting point. There's a book called Metaphysical Anatomy that, if I have a shoulder pain, I'll go into Metaphysical Anatomy and it'll say, what are you, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders? Louise Hay is great for this. And sure enough, the emotion, the connection between the emotion and the body is now something that we can decode through the experience of thousands of years of folk wisdom that is being codified in these texts like Louise Hay, and Metaphysical Anatomy. So where am I going with that? There's Besser van der Kolk's book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, love it.
The body has a memory of all of its unresolved traumas. There is a somatic expression of what we have experienced in our past. And sometimes the cold brings it out in ways that we're not necessarily prepared for, but will help us explore. Some people say, why does Morozko Forge have to get so cold? I can get a cheaper bath that goes down to 42 and that gives me all the metabolic. It's true. But we go so cold because it's got to scare me. If I'm not frightened, I'm not challenging my sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. So I want to see that ice. I want to get that anxiety.
Yes, and I've done 40. In fact, the first day I got into the forge, it had not cooled down enough yet because it takes a couple of days to get all the way to 32. Yeah. And so I was anxious to get in. So I was like, let me get in. It was 43 degrees. So it was pretty cold.
Yeah.
And I got in there and I'm like 20 minutes later, I'm like, do I have to get out? I just want to stay in because it really wasn't uncomfortable yet. I needed 32 to be uncomfortable yet tolerable with breathing. And so you're right. And seeing all that ice, the visual, that's why I leave the ice in there. When it started warming up, when it started getting warmer weather here as spring approached, all my ice melted overnight. And I was like, no, I need the ice just for the psychological,
That's
I'm
right.
doing something badass and I'm overcoming.
That's right.
And so I turned it down to 30 degrees to start pumping out ice again.
How did it go?
Oh, I made a hell of a lot of ice. In fact, like 5 days ago, there was probably 3/4 of my forge was ice. So I was like trying to get in. I was on camera and I was having to like wedge myself in under all of that. And it was heavy on top of me. The ice around me is pushing down so hard on top of me. And everybody's like, you might want to melt some of that ice. I'm like, yeah, I swung too much the other direction.
Are you using any Epsom salt?
No.
Okay, put 10 pounds of Epsom salt in your forge, and it's the ice. I mean, you do get some of the float tank type benefit, but a float tank will have 8 pounds per pound. Like a float tank will use hundreds of pounds, and I'm saying use 10 pounds. So you get a little magnesium sulfate, a little muscle. But what I really like about it is it softens up the ice. So when I make too much and I'm looking at a layer like 6 inches thick, and I got to take my steel mace and bust it all up.
Oh, you should see me with a hammer under the water, like an hour before I'm supposed to go in the air. And there's this big, thick thing at the bottom. I'm just like, oh, please just break up. Because I cut my toe, my right toe on day 6 of this 365-day challenge. And because it had made some ice and I didn't realize it. And I put my foot in and it just went slice and it sliced my second toe.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I should have told you about that a long time ago.
I was a newbie to doing your thing. Now I always run my hand along the bottom to feel ice. And if there's any sharp, take a hammer. And people don't realize the struggle is real when you have ice baths.
Well, I use 8 pounds in mine. I only have a little 4-foot because I'm on the 29th floor. I got a tiny patio. You got 6 foot. So put 10 pounds of Epsom salt in. It's going to soften up that ice so that when you're breaking it up with the hammer, you won't have to work quite so hard, and it won't cut your toe anymore. So there's
I'm very careful when I go in. Everybody reminds me, Jimmy, lift your feet. Don't just slide your feet in. So they got my back.
Are you doing any exercise after your forge to help rewarm?
No. Okay. Like I said,
I want you to try something.
Okay.
I know that you're going for the maximum, like let my brown fat and thermogenesis bring my temperature back up. But I read a study in Japan. This is early 90s, and it's all 20-something college age men. They tried cold to recover from exercise. So they were on the exercise bike, and then they did an ice bath. And they noticed that the levels of testosterone went way down when they did the cold after exercise. But this is the only study I've read where they also reversed it. They did the cold and then the exercise, which is nobody is doing. So they used exercise on the bike to recover from the ice bath. Testosterone went way up. Luteinizing hormone, which is a metabolic precursor of testosterone, went way up. Now, as you know, testosterone is critical for male body composition. So one of the things that you might find is if you do some exercise, it can be jumping jacks. I got my steel mace out, squats. Wim Hof has his, horse stance kind of thing, but squats are a good one. The idea is to get the blood circulating back into your extremities. And it doesn't take a lot, not even 20 minutes, and to boost your testosterone levels to get the body composition benefits. Now, I didn't realize I was doing this. I've got an article up on our website, but I sort of stumbled across it. I was doing ice baths because I wanted to get my prostate specific antigen down. And yes, I knew that the ketones from the ice bath would help with that. But I came out and I was cold. So I'm like, I picked up my steel mace and I'm using it to rewarm. Jimmy, my testosterone went through the roof. Anyway, the last test was a little over a year ago, and I tested out 1140, which for a man in his 50s is ridiculously high. I got the testosterone of an oversexed teenager, for goodness sakes. No, I don't know if it's still there. I got to test again. It's a remarkable result.
My 750 pales in comparison.
But 750 is really good for, I mean, by Western standards for a 50-year-old man. So, some people looked at that and they said, well, that's just you or whatever. So Jason started doing the same protocol, exercise, ice bath, exercise. And he measures himself every year on his birthday. He's up in the mid 900s. He's 42. Wow. So now that we have these two data points, I'm trying to encourage other men you've already got your T levels measured, and your doctor's probably telling Jimmy, you're looking great in the 700s. That's terrific. But what if you added some squats after your ice bath, measured again in a few months? If you're up in the 900s, then you'll have the same experience that Jason and I have had.
Yeah. Challenge accepted, Tom.
All right.
I will have to do that. I have a little bit of a left knee issue, so squats might be a challenge. Could you get the same benefit doing like a walk afterwards, or is that not intense?
No, that's great. A brisk walk, you could do your soccer mom walk.
I walk fast. I've got long legs. I'm 6'3", so I have long legs, and I'm always told when I walk with people, slow down, Jimmy, you're walking too fast. So I walk fast.
I love it. That's a perfect way. See if you can get your arms involved a little bit too. So you can get jumping jacks that get the blood back into your fingertips. But yeah, walking's terrific.
Okay. Challenge accepted. I think that's a great idea.
Thanks.
And now lighter later. So if I do a 5 o'clock ice bath and I go off Instagram and then do a 30-minute walk, is that what we're talking about?
Could be 20 minutes. Yeah. You're getting a little more sunshine now. You're on daylight savings time. And maybe a little more of that outdoor is good for you anyway.
Exactly. And I walk regularly anyway, but this could be a way to incorporate it post ice bath. And I'll have to talk about this if it actually produces results. So
we'll see how your sleep does too. I would love for you to talk about it.
Yeah, my sleep's pretty great. But see, this is the problem. When you do things like I eat kind of a carnivore keto diet, I get grounding and sunshine exposure. I do regular walking. I do ice baths. I do red light therapy. I do vibration play. I do all of these things. It's like any changes are just, it's just a little micro. Whereas if somebody comes from, say, standard American diet and not doing anything and then implements even just ice baths, they're going to see massive improvements because it's at least something moving them massively away from that poor health habit they were in before. So the fact that I see any changes at all, just adding the ice baths, has been pretty remarkable.
Very happy to hear that. Last time we saw each other was in Orlando.
Yes.
And I'm happy to see you again now. What else can you tell me has changed since we saw each other in Orlando?
Man, everything in terms of like outlook on life, energy levels. Like I look at a lot of my peers that are my age group. They don't have the energy that I have. They're starting to lose some of their mental faculties. Like I don't feel like I've skipped a beat. I almost want to go back to school again because I feel like I could excel at whatever academic pursuit I had. I almost want to go get some medical training to add to all this knowledge that I've done. I've been a podcaster for 17 years. And so I feel like I've learned lots of things from all the people I've interviewed, but I would love to have like some of that. And I think I could retain it really well. That's been the other thing. My brain is just on fire. And like, only thing I've changed, I mean, obviously I put myself nutritionally in a good spot eating the way that I do, but keto, carnivore plus ice baths means, I mean, it's just out of this world. And
Ben Bickman just did a post. Do you remember Ben Bickman? He wrote Why We Get Sick.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. He just did a post about on Instagram about how your brain prefers ketones. This is a huge debate. However, when Ben Bickman, PhD, tells me something, I write that stuff down. I'm not saying that, I mean, I love doing my own read the journal. You know, I'm a university professor, but I've read Ben's book and I know he's a studious individual. And when he says your brain prefers ketones, that tells me, it leans me towards the debate about how ketosis is good for your brain health. I've noticed that I sleep way better when I'm in ketosis.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And it's the lowering of the blood sugar, I think, that causes that sleep to be better, because we're not meant to have high blood sugar, high insulin, and high inflammation, that kind of triple whammy. When they're high, you can't sleep, you don't have energy, you don't think straight. Like, getting those three markers in line, and Ben is brilliant. I've had him on my podcast a few times now, but yeah, we've known that the brain is fueled very well by ketones. I interviewed this guy in 2007, Dr. Larry McCleary. He had a book called The Brain Trust Program, and he put that on my radar screen. He's like, Jimmy, all the brain health researchers know that the body, and the brain specifically, prefers ketones as its primary fuel source. Now, he was talking about taking krill oil to kind of get there, but we now know carbohydrate restriction and healthy saturated fats and all the ways to get there, that you don't need to like hijack it with exogenous ketones and all this kind of stuff. Just eat nutritionally low carb, higher fat, and you'll get there.
Fastest way to produce endogenous ketones is Morozko Forge.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I think that's where the energy has come from, actually, Tom, but where I have an increase in energy, which I was not a slothful person despite my weight before, but I'm really not slothful now. Now I just out of this world energy.
What Ben didn't mention, unless I missed it, was that the brain loves the cold too. Cold therapy is good for your brain.
Yes.
And I'm just starting to scratch the surface on this. I wrote an article called Cold and Cognition, and I want to go deeper. There will be a follow-up article, especially because what you're telling me is you feel, I don't know how to put it, smarter.
Yes. And let me tell you when it really shifted too. For the first 6 weeks of doing this, I was scared to put my head under the water. I'm like, that will freak me out. 32 degrees. Even though I would start feeling like heat emanating when I was in there out of my head, and I still do to this day, that by the time I get to the end of the 5 minutes, the last 20 seconds, I'm like, all right, guys, I'm going under the water, and I plug my nose and my ears and I go under. I didn't do that until 6 weeks in. I do it every time now. And I'm even pushing myself. First I would do like 5-6 seconds. Now I do 15 to 20 seconds. Like, I'm under there a long time, because I can feel all of that heat, all of that, everything. And I come up out of there and I'm like, woo! I'm like real, like charged. And it just lasts. That energy just comes. And I've even been doing not 5 minutes, but in the morning time, not every day, but when I'm like, all right, I feel pretty good today, let's pop in the forge for a minute. And so I'll go in, I'll get in, I do all the things, and like the last 15 seconds, go into the water, come up. I don't scream that time of day. I might wake up some neighbors, but it's great. Like that's been an interesting aspect of this too, was I didn't realize how much heat my brain was producing until I was conscientious of it. And now that I feel it, especially being in the forge, and again, it's the brown fat probably producing some of that heat and everything. It's great, but going under and then coming up and just that feeling coming up out of the water, I have to be careful with all that ice in there. I like wiggle my way up and I don't bound out of there like I used to. That alone has just been total game changer. So if you're doing the forge, you guys, you've got one of these beautiful products, go under the water and watch how it changes how you feel, how your brain works. Like you said, you feel smarter, your mood, your sleep. When I started doing this was the fascinating part. I increased my deep sleep by about 20% just by dipping my head under the water. And it's been pretty consistent. So I do it every time now. And even some mornings, if I'm like kind of groggy and kind of not feeling great, I'll just dip my head and just in the forge, just get, okay, I'm here. Whew, whew, I'm here. And
Mike
it's great.
Morozco does a similar thing. He's way up north compared to you, and he has longer winters, but he will do this kind of thing. He will go back. Face first is tough, so I don't recommend face first, although I did see Frank Tortorici do it on Instagram the other day. I have a very difficult time going all the way under. I say that I want to get to 10 seconds, but I do my count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You know? I'm trying to stretch that out. It's very difficult to relax, and there's some good like biological reasons for why mammals experience that anxiety. However, you mentioned that sometimes you just go in for a minute. And Scott Carney, he wrote What Doesn't Kill Us. He wrote The Wedge. He coined this term called microdosing the cold. He sent me a note and said, Tom, the biggest difference, because he's a cold guy, but the biggest difference in my life now that I have a forge is I can microdose the cold. A minute. Mutsu will do the same thing. He'll do 45 seconds.
Yes.
And he gets a big benefit psychologically, little bit of a metabolic boost, big energy boost. And you don't need to be in there 5 minutes.
So my experimental brain things that I'm thinking of, I podcast a lot. I mean, a lot. I do 4 a week. And so I'm constantly interviewing people. And I thought, how cool would it be for like 1 week before I get on the air to interview these people? I pop in the forge for 1 minute, like 15 minutes before I go on the air, and just subjectively, how do I feel? Is it any different? Like I'm good on the air. I'm always ready to go, but will it be even better? And it's just something I don't want to tell anybody that I'm doing that, but I want to just do it and then go, okay, that was interesting. So I'll be doing that very soon for those that follow my work.
All right. Tell me what else is coming up for you in 2022?
Yeah. So I actually am an author. You guys that watch may not know, I've written a few books, and maybe you've heard of Keto Clarity, Cholesterol Clarity, Complete Diet Fasting. I want to write a book on cold therapy, Tom, called Cold Therapy Clarity. Yeah. Because I feel like this is a topic that I really haven't seen great books on out there. And I'm an established author and I have a certain style. I'm very folksy, so people appreciate, we need the science, but you need interpreters of said science. And I've gotten pretty good at interpreting science. And so I want to do my spin on it. I would obviously cover ice baths and mention your product in there because I use your product. But I would also mention cryotherapy and cold showers and just cold exposure to the air and what are the pros and cons of kind of each one. And so I'll be working on that starting in May. I'm taking off all of my podcasts for the whole month so I can get that book kind of rolling. Because once I get the infrastructure of the book down, then I can write it within the course of my own work the rest of the year, and probably will take the whole year working on it. I will be coming to you guys about experts to be in the book as well. So so that's.
Let me write a foreword or something. Can I contribute something?
Oh, you will contribute. Yeah, you definitely.
I would love to.
I would love to get Wim Hof, but that man is hard to nail down for like an interview. Trust me, I have tried hard to get an interview with Wim Hof. But yes, I will definitely be coming to you guys. Y'all are definitely great friends, and I have appreciated interacting with you with all my findings using your product. But So that's a big thing. I just, as of the recording of this, am about to release a book on going kind of one step deeper, some of that mindset stuff we were talking about earlier, and dealing with trauma and releasing the trauma. I've got, me and my best friend have a book called One Step Deeper Journal, the Foundation. So it's like a 40-day journal to help people start their personal growth. If you're going to get into an ice bath, you better start dealing with some of this stuff. And if you don't start releasing that, all the dieting in the world, all the making yourself get cold in the world, it's not going to help. And then just continuing my work, continuing all these ice baths every day, just to show people you can get into 32-degree water and you won't die. Like, I hope I've proved that now after 3 months of doing this. So I'm interested as we get into the warmer months. And this is just something I was just thinking about today, Thomas. What's going to happen now that I'm getting this kind of thermogenic effect? What's going to happen? Because I've never tolerated heat very well at all. Will I be able to tolerate heat better because I exposed myself to the cold and the cold is warming me up? Will that warm up now make even the heat tolerable? I'm anxious to see. I don't know.
I found when I started my cold practice, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Lived about a little over a mile, about a mile and a half from my office on campus. So I found I would do my ice bath and then I would walk to campus, maybe 110, 112 out in Phoenix. And I thought it was great. I was using my walk for my rewarming. So when you mentioned, could I walk? I'm like, well, I've done that. And I got really good results. But I was walking in some extreme, we would call it extreme heat because it's in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I think that you'll find you might want to shift your practice. Doing it in the evening is one way, but I was doing it in the morning and I would get hours of relief from the Phoenix heat because my body stayed cooler. So I'll be curious to see if you feel compelled to change your practice, what kind of results are you getting, and if they compare to mine. You're in a much more humid environment, so you're not going to sweat the same, and we'll just compare notes.
Well, let me tell you why I'm doing it in the evening. I have something happen to me when I get in the Morozco. I almost invariably get sleepy after I've been in there. So I have the preemptive rise in temperature. I get in, my body temp drops 1 to 2 degrees while I'm in the forge. I get out, it does the little dipsy doodle, up, down, up, down, up, down temperature until it kind of lowers the core body temperature so that I start getting sleepy. Now it's also the time of the day, so that's contributing, the sun going down, things. I did an experiment recently where I got in the forge at 8 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to see how would I get that same sleep response. Well, I did the forge. It was also cold that day, so I was kind of out in the element somewhat. And around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was so heavy. I was doing an interview with somebody from 2 to 3. And at 3 o'clock, I was just like, I am so tired. I went to bed at 3:30 in the afternoon. I mean, legit, not nap.
You're like a kid.
And I'm like, crap, I need to work. I can't go to sleep. But it showed me, 5 minutes anyway, that I can't do a 5-minute ice bath early in the day. These 1-minute ones I've been doing, the micro dosing like you were talking about, perfect. I can do those in the morning. I don't feel the negative sleepiness effects. And so something is happening in me when I do these longer jaunts in the Morozco Forge that makes me sleepy. So, but to your point, I was thinking I would probably do 2 5-minute ice baths a day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Because by the time summer gets here and it's really hot, I will have been doing this 5 to 6 months. I'm going to need something to step up the intensity and the challenge of this. Not that 32 degrees for 5 minutes isn't challenging, but not near like it was at the beginning. And
not
so
for you anymore.
Like, yeah. So I could go longer in one session. I do like the idea of maybe a microdose. Maybe one of my experiments, you got my wheels turning now. Maybe one of my experiments could be microdose 1 minute every hour on the hour that I'm awake one day. And just what that would feel like.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Really neat, Jimmy. I'm glad you're planning to write about it. You got no business going back to school unless it's to teach.
I do love to teach. I feel like I have the heart of a teacher. I've learned a lot from all the interviews I've done over the years, and all the stuff that I do myself. And I just try to pass along those lessons to people, and we just see what happens from there.
It's been great watching your 2022 so far.
I needed something after the the breakup and everything. I just needed something that kind of reignited a passion within me, because I've talked about keto diets for 2 decades. I'm tired of talking about low carb diets. Like, I still believe in them, but there's only so many ways to tell people eat real food and keep your carbs low. So this has been nice. And thank you for your product, because when I went to look for an ice bath, I went to Mike Mutzel and I said, Mike, please tell me, because I know you know all these people, who has the best product. And he said, dude, by far, it's Morozko Forge. And so he was the one that sold me on it. And I looked into it, and it was okay, I gotta take out a mortgage on this. But no, it was definitely worth it. Having now gotten it, and everybody's like, oh, the sticker shock, it's so high. But look what it does. On a whim, I can go, when I'm done talking to you, I can go in a 32-degree ice bath any time of the year. It's got its own ice, it's got its own filtration system. I'm a believer. If you can invest in that, and it makes you do more ice baths, and that keeps you out of the hospital, you're going to come out saving later.
I agree. What we're really selling is convenience, because there are lots of DIYers, lots of videos. Mike's got one on how to do a chest freezer, how to do your own, which is fine. Anything that gets people in the cold, I want to support them. But most of our customers, they appreciate the convenience. The filtration system works. The ice production system works. And so the return on investment is really in their time. This idea that you can microdose whenever you want is life-changing.
Before I got yours, I was buying 20-pound bags of ice from Sam's Club. And I've got a little 4-foot tub in there, and I'm 6'3" and a big boy. So I would get my legs in there for about 10 minutes. Then I'd wiggle down and get like stomach area, and I'd wiggle down some more to get the vagus nerve below the wall. It was a pain in the ass is what it was. And then I would, like, at the end, like, do this number. And I did that for a year before I discovered you guys. And then, I was so anxious to get yours. I think I ordered in like August, and you guys had just had Joe Rogan mention you. So I was like, oh boy, I'm not going to get mine for a while. and that was okay. By the time I got it, it was worth the wait. It was funny seeing the guys try to deliver it, because this thing is heavy. It's really heavy. And the guys were, a couple of like mid-60s guys, and well, where are you putting it? What is this thing? And I was like explaining man, this thing's heavy. Are you gonna put your body in there? Yes. So anyway, it's funny, and it's great. It's nice that companies like yours come out of nowhere to offer something that you yourself wanted. That's how it was produced. You and Jason kind of talking about this, and then now look, everybody wants to get cold, and that's going to be my mantra: get cold every once in a while. Make yourself cold, because there's nothing but benefits that come from that.
I agree. I want to write an article about this. What's like brain activated thermogenesis. And maybe I'll get.
I would add the caveat: not even brain activated, subconscious brain activated.
Right, not even conscious.
I'm not consciously going, think warmer, Jimmy. Think warmer. Think warmer. Think warmer. Fire, fire, fire. I'm not even like thinking about it.
Maybe that's the next step.
What's that?
I wonder if you could turn it on, if there was a way for you to concentrate, because Carney talks a little bit about the instructions he got from Wim Hof. He writes about this in What Doesn't Kill Us, about rewarming. And there was something, if I recall correctly, about concentrating his focus on the brown fat between his shoulder blades. And it's not the only technique, but Wim talks about how he healed frostbite in his toe. I mean, ordinarily people would amputate, but he's like, no, he healed frostbite in his toe by concentrating his energy on the toe. This is something that my daughter has learned. Now, my daughter, she's moved to New York City, and she doesn't practice ice baths anymore, but she's a level 3 or whatever it is, Krav Maga instructor.
Yes.
what happened to her one day, she was sparring with higher belts. These are experts. And, they're very conscious when they're sparring with somebody less experienced to not hurt that person, to challenge them at the right level. But something happened where my daughter stepped back and her knee gave out. She hit the mat. And the black belts, they think, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I messed up. And you know how there's the kind of the usual rush, like, do you need anything? Are you okay?
Yeah.
He surrounded her, and then they didn't say anything because she was kissing her knee like this. And she was saying, I love you, knee. It's okay, knee. And sending all of her support and love and energy to her knee. Now, I've met a lot of athletes. They feel betrayed when they have an injury. Whether it's an Achilles tendon or a knee or an elbow, especially in baseball where there's a lot of throwing. And I've met a lot of athletes who get angry at the body part that is in pain because it's preventing them from performing. But my daughter's attitude was, I love this body part. I need this body part. It's on my team and I want to give it support. And the Krav people had never seen that before. The story stuck with me. When I get into my forge, if there's something I want to work on, sometimes the cold will bring it up. Could be a toe, which I had trouble with several months ago. And I will sort of scan my body and I will say, I will send the energy to wherever I think it needs it. And I'll remember my daughter and I'll say, you're on the team, Toe. We love you, Toe. We need you on whatever you need to come back. We value the job you're doing for us. I talk to myself in this crazy way. I wonder if you could turn up your body temperature consciously by meditating on it, by focusing your energy on it and just seeing what happens.
I could do it in real time on Instagram sometime where I practice.
And it would be amazing because what you would prove is you don't have to be a monk and you don't have to be Wim Hof and you don't have to be a world record holding, outdoor swimmer to make this happen.
But it makes sense because you can see blood sugar increases from stress in real time. I've been wearing a CGM from time to time. And I'll get a distressing phone call. And I while I'm on the call, I'm sitting there like doing swipes and it's going up in real time. So why would we not think that the same thing couldn't happen the other direction with something positive? And now that you mentioned kind of your toe thing, I've got this left knee and this right shoulder little tweak.
Send them the love, Jimmy.
You got me wanting to love on them in the Morozco today.
Exactly. Tell your knee how much you love it and how much you value it and how much you depend upon it and how you're counting on it for the next 100 years.
Again, thank you for making the product. I know you guys made it for Phoenix, Arizona, but Spartanburg, South Carolina on my back porch has a beautiful forge sitting there. I kind of feel bad because I know people buy them for their health centers and things, and they have patients come in and out all day long. I'm like, I got mine all to my own. There's only one other person that's been in there. My friend Kelly, she's also a health coach and eats carnivore. She came and visited me for my 50th birthday party recently. And she's like, I want to get in your forge. I'm like, knock yourself out. So she got it. She did 4 minutes her very first time. I was like, whoa, because Sean Baker only made it 2 minutes in Mike's the first time.
Nice. It's impressive.
He's just like, it's cold. It's cold.
I watched that one too.
Yes, but she did it like a champ. Now, as soon as she stepped out, Tom, she went. She was really having a bad shiver response, and she actually has had some health issues. And it kind of brought out some detoxification in her. She created like some streaks. And that even happened to me the first time I got in the forge, the very first time. I had blotches all over my belly, like big streaks and blotches. And I remember writing to you guys, somebody, Adrian or Jason, somebody wrote back and said, that's detox, something's happening. And it literally never happened again after that very first time.
You're the second person that I know of personally who have experienced those blotches when they started their practice and watched them resolve themselves.
Now I get red. I still get red, but you're in
ice tan.
Water. You're gonna be red. If you're not red, you're not human.
Right. Well, thank you, Jimmy. This has been a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to learning more from your self-experimentation and writing about it so I can share it with the rest of our community.
Yes, sir. I will keep writing about it. And yeah, I'm excited about that book now.
Me too. I can't wait to read it.
Cool.
I'll talk to you soon.